We are going to be discussing the next round of CARES Act funding from the Office of Arts and Culture within the city of Sacramento. This, there we go. This grant overview is going to cover 3 grants, all of which are reimbursement grants, and we'll go over what that means. And these grants are for arts nonprofits, individual artists, and also creative businesses. So welcome. Full disclosure, sometimes my internet can be super awful. I also have 2 kids doing Zoom school right now and co-working with my partner who's a professor in teaching. So if we get disconnected, I will be hopping right back on. Usually takes me about 2 minutes, but the last couple weeks have been pretty good actually since I upgraded. So just be patient if I get knocked off. I don't think I will. The other thing is that sometimes when I'm presenting and sharing my screen, I can't necessarily keep track of the chat. So just feel free if you have like a burning question and you've put it in the chat and you're like, why isn't she seeing it? It's because I'm not seeing it. So just like popcorn style, like, hey, I have a question, okay? There is time for questions definitely at the end of my presentation today. There's a lot to cover. It's not as much as we covered in the first round of grants because we're not dealing with program grants or collective grants. So this is just reimbursement. And one of the nice things is that if you applied for round 1 of grants, this process I feel has been way more streamlined. However, there are a few changes and there are a few more questions as well. So let's get started and begin. So I want to start off with this quote by George Santayana, which is that an artist is a dreamer consenting to dream of the actual world. I love this quote because we are living in the actual world. And if you are a dreamer like me, this sucks. So our work and job is to keep holding the line of dreaming and making and doing and inspiring and connecting through the arts, but also to work within the actual constraints of what the world is and has become. And so for me, how this applies to grant writing is that I've been teaching people how to write grants for a long time. I've been writing grants, managing grants for like at least 14 to 15 years now. And, you know, there's always these sort of gripes and complaints because it's not a perfect process. And often the language that funders speak is not the same language that you and I speak and talk in our everyday life and work, you know? So there's always this sort of disconnect. And it can be really frustrating. It can feel like a barrier, right? When you are like, I'm doing good work. I'm an artist. I'm serving my community. I'm making cool things. I'm doing cool stuff. And yet I have to apply to this like bureaucratic actual world thing that they might tell me no. And then I've put all this time and energy in creating a grant ask, which, you know, probably took some bravery and courage. And so it's just fraught, right? The whole thing is fraught. And so what I say to people who are like, I hate writing grants. I don't want to try. I've tried before. I don't know what they're saying. You know, this is us consenting to the actual world and how we translate and fit in. So my hope today is that I break things down for you, in particular for this grant process, which I have to say, it's pretty easy compared to many of the grants that are out there, right? If you have to write a National Endowment for the Arts grant, that is not this. That is a whole other beast, right? So we've tried to make it easy and break it down for you so that you can keep dreaming and working and doing despite everything that COVID has done in our society to waylay a lot of things. So with that, we're going to work on the 3 applications, the nonprofit reimbursement first, and don't check out. If you are an individual artist or a creative, we're going to go through every question. I'm going to give you sentence starters. I'm going to give you language that you can use, literally copy and paste, fill in. Have you guys ever played Mad Libs where you fill in the blank? We're going to do that. so we're going to go through the nonprofit reimbursement grant first, but I'm telling you, it's nearly identical to the individual artist grant and the for-profit creative business grant. It all connects. So be here the entire time and take notes, even if you're like, but I'm not a nonprofit or I'm not a creative business. All the questions apply to you. And I'm going to try to be real clear about how. So this is Submittable, which is the online platform that the city uses for you to submit your grant. So you get there by going to that website, or if you're on the Office of Arts and Culture website, you can easily get there by clicking the Apply Now button. So applications are open through September 30th, and I would like you to start them now. So no procrastination, which all of us creatives are super procrastinators, because I think it's a lot part of our creative process. This is not that. So get started, because you're also going to have to go and get a bunch of documentation to prove your reimbursable expenses, and it's totally doable, but the sooner you start, the better. All right, let's talk about requirements real quickly for the grants. Ray Gargano from the city of Sacramento has already had a couple workshops kind of talking about what the requirements are. I've distilled them here for what I think is pertinent for us to know and enter together. So one is that this is CARES Act money. So if you applied for the last round, this should look familiar to you. If you are a new applicant for this round, you need to know 4 things. One is that all this money has to be tied to the COVID-19 public health emergency. The time period, for this grant is from March 1st to September 15th. That is what you're going to say, I want to get reimbursed for these things. Those things must have been purchased between March 1st and September 15th, okay? The second note is, this is like all over the place and it's very confusing. It says that these funds were not accounted for in the city's budget. We're talking about the city's budget. So let's say that you have an agreement with the city and the city said, hey, we're going to pay for your studio rent for the whole year. And they already paid you the studio rent for the whole year. You cannot ask to get reimbursed for studio rent that the city already paid for out of its budget. That is what that means. So this actually doesn't apply to many of you, except for maybe the nonprofits that already have something paid by the city, whether it could be a program, etc. Now, the third thing is that you have to expend your funds before December 30th. So what that means is that if you get a grant, this grant, and you get awarded, they're gonna send you a check in the mail for what you asked for or something close to what you asked for, okay? You have to cash the check by December 30th. That's it. That's what that means. And everything that you're gonna ask for in your grant application, you cannot double dip, which means that no other CARES Act funding could have been applied to what you're asking for. So if you applied for the first reimbursement grant, which was March 1st to the end of June, and you got awarded, right? You wouldn't repeat those reimbursements. You already got awarded through that. Maybe you got CARES Act funding from the first round of small business loans that came out. You can't double dip, so just be really aware of that. Things that you can look at are on the website. This is the City of Sacramento CARES website. They have the guidelines, the FAQ, how the attorney and auditor have interpreted the federal guidelines. So all there for you. Okay, so what's different from round 1 grants? I think it's way more streamlined. There are a few more questions. And then this. So 1, there are no program grants for this time. This is only reimbursement grants. The time frame again is March 1st to September 15th, right? So you can see that there is that overlap, right? Because you're like, well, why didn't they just make it June 30th or July 1st to September 15th? Well, we may have a new grantee that didn't get to apply for round 1. So we opened it up March 1st to September 15th. There are 3 grants: nonprofit, for-profit creative business, and individual artist reimbursement. And we'll talk about in a second where you fit in. There's an updated cover sheet that was required last time. It's required this time too. We'll go over that. And there are a few more questions that were requested by the commission and the panelists that would help them score a little bit better for this round. We'll go over those. All right, so who can apply? You have to be an arts and culture nonprofit. You have to have a 501c3. You get to apply for eligible general operating expenses. We'll talk about what the eligible expenses are. Number 2, for-profit creative businesses. Your office must be located within the city of Sacramento, and you can be reimbursed for eligible operating expenses too. Individual artists must reside in the city of Sacramento. That means your house and apartment where you live must be in the city of Sacramento, not just your studio. And then you are eligible for business expenses and any lost work or contracts that were canceled on you during that time frame, okay? So let's talk about what you can apply for and how much. So eligible reimbursement expenses only. That means that you already spent the money between March 1st and September 15th. No IOUs, like let's say that your landlord said, hey, you know, the pandemic has hit, you don't have to pay rent for the next 6 months. You can't get reimbursed on rent you didn't pay. So can't do that. Or let's say that a board member paid for the insurance costs to stay open, right? As a donation to your organization if you're a nonprofit. You can't get reimbursed those because they were paid for by somebody else, right? They were a donation. So things like that, things that you directly spent out of your pocket can be reimbursed for those eligible expenses. There's no cap on the amount. You can ask for $1 million if you wanted to, right? As long as you have documentation. I can't say you would get $1 million, probably not. Often there's too many requests and we have to adjust levels and award amounts and stuff like that in the aftermath, but you can apply for the moon. One application only. There's a little special caveat that we'll get to when we get to creative businesses and artists, but you're gonna just apply for one application. Whereas in the last round, we made you apply for an equipment or reimbursement or a program. It was all over the place. So one application only. And then it's scored by a panel. So the panel makes recommendations for funding based off a scoring rubric and the notes that they have. And then there's the number of requests that we get. So many of us did receive round 1 of CARES Act money, but we didn't get the full amount. We didn't get the full amount because we had too many applications and requests, right? So they would do things like, okay, this score gets 90% of what they asked for, and this score gets 75% of what they asked for. Now, here's the caveat. If you asked for reimbursement for something in round 1 and you didn't get it and it's still eligible, you can apply for it in round 2. So for instance, I got a reimbursement grant as a creative business. I got, I think, 85 to 90% of my ask. There's still a gap. I could include that in my round 2 application to get reimbursed. All right, I am gonna check the chat. Awesome, moving on. Okay, so these are the requirements. We spoke about this in the last round. One thing that's changed is that there's no insurance requirement now, which is great. So you have to have a City of Sacramento vendor account. That is free. You have to have a Sacramento business occupancy tax certificate or exemption. That usually costs around $39 and you pay for it once a year. And then you have to have a home office permit if you are working from your home office. So if you do not have these things right now, that's okay. And it does not impede your score. If you are awarded a grant, we expect you to do these 3 things, right? And we can help you with that. And there's lots of materials and PDFs that show you how to do that, and on the website too. So, and we also have mentors and just people who are standing by to make this really easy for you. So we had a question last night at the Creative Economy meeting. An individual artist said, hey, like I'm really struggling financially right now, and even paying $39 for a business occupancy tax is a choice that I have to make between eating and paying for this to apply for a grant that I might not get. My answer to him was, I want you to apply for the grant and don't pay for the BOT or the home office permit yet. You will get an award letter in your email telling you how much you're going to get. So if you get awarded $4,000, you're going to have to understand, am I willing to pay $200 right now to get that award? And he was like, well, of course I would. I would figure that out. I was like, that's it right there. So just try, and then we can work this stuff out as you get your award letter. But if you can kickstart this process right now, please do. Plus, it just professionalizes you, and it just puts you in the city system, and now you're like a business, and you can feel all fancy about that if you'd like. Okay. The other thing that you're going to have to do is create a free submittable account if you don't have one. It is so easy to sign up. It is literally that screen in the middle. Put your email in, your password, confirm it, your name, you're done, okay? Then when you're on the Office of Arts and Culture site, you can now submit and apply for all the grants and the offerings that they have. That's easy. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to download the cover sheet for documented expenses. We're going to go over this cover sheet also at the end of our presentation today, because I'm really just trying to get to the questions, which is the meat of your grant, right? But this is what it looks like this time, which is a little bit different than last time. It'll tell you what the eligible expenses are, which is like rent, mortgage, lease, insurance, utilities, debt payments, right? Like you have ongoing debt that you have to pay, or something bad could happen. You know, essential stuff, payroll, healthcare, workers' comp, maintenance, website, marketing, accounting, licenses and permits. Many of us had to go and buy Zoom, right? Zoom subscriptions, that is an eligible expense. Memberships, equipment leasing, you know, there's all these things, the PPE for protective equipment, technology for virtual programming, equipment that you had to buy, stuff like that, that was necessary due to the pandemic and mandated closures. All right, first thing, and I'm going to say this a lot, only individual artists can apply for lost gigs and lost work. Nonprofits and creative businesses cannot apply for lost revenue. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail about that. All right, again, I already kind of went through some of these eligible expenses. They're basically just your core operating expenses as a business or as an artist, okay? Now, for artists, if you were an artist, right, and maybe you had a commission for a mural, maybe you had a sales agreement for a piece of art that you were going to make, or a performance, you were going to play at a bar or a restaurant somewhere, right? And you have this agreement with the client, the customer, and they say, oh, pandemic happened, I don't have any money, everything's closed, I can't honor our agreement. What we need to reimburse you for that lost income, essentially, that lost contract, that lost gig, is we need to have proof from the person who hired you, right? The dates that you were going to do the work or deliver the work, the agreement of what you would have been paid, and the confirmation that it has been canceled or postponed. That is what we need from you. So let's say you had a gig for $1,000 and the bar manager is like, yeah, you can't play because you can't come in. You need an email or something from them saying, yeah, they were supposed to perform this day. I was going to pay them $1,000 and I had to cancel it due to the pandemic. That is eligible enough to submit that request for $1,000. All right. So now this is something that's kind of new, and because we had a lot of questions come up about, right, like what are the eligible expenses for organizations and nonprofits, right? So for cultural, like creative businesses and nonprofits, we're saying that we can reimburse you for general operating expenses that needed to be paid to maintain your business during the closure, right? Or for personal protection equipment or other equipment that you had to purchase to maintain or shift your business. Lots of people had to buy tripods, cameras, better technology equipment, right? All that stuff is included. So there's 3 scenarios here, and you have to decide how you best fit. Your organization or business just ceased operations and remained closed. And so you had some general operating costs that allowed you to just sort of be dormant. You can submit those. Let's say that the organization shut down its physical location, but it was still able to keep going, right? So think about all these arts nonprofits that are in education. They couldn't go into their office or work, but they all were working from home, and they switched to digital online learning and workshops. A lot of us did that, right? So you can still cover your essential your general operating costs and any equipment or things that you had to do for the pivot, okay? And then let's say your organization ceased operations entirely, but now it's resumed them again, right? You can apply for the lost operating expenses for your closure and what you did specifically for COVID-19. I think this is a little bit confusing, but we just kept getting these questions over and over again. And essentially it is this: what did you have to pay for to be able to keep your business, keep your nonprofit, keep your work, right? That kind of stuff. I hope I'm saying that right. I think I am. All right. And then lastly, as an overview, all the work of the Office of Arts and Culture through the City of Sacramento is guided by the Creative Edge Plan. And the Creative Edge Plan has 6 main goals in it that they're directed to work under. And so whenever you are writing a grant and you want money from a funder, and the funder is like, hey, here's our guiding goals and principles, it's up to you to figure out how you fit and belong, because that helps make your argument for why they should give you money. So this does and doesn't apply to this grant, but I'm making a plug for it because if you're an artist, a creative, a nonprofit, and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting grants now and I really want to work with the city, and wow, there's money for that. There's money for that. Oh my gosh, right? They want me to propose ideas. It needs to fit in the plan. So I really suggest all of you go and read the plan. I just gave a presentation on it with Estella Sanchez from Soul Collective and Manifested Visions a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. It is chock full of ideas for you to do, work in the city, all that kind of stuff. All right. So here we go. I'm going to check my chat. One more. All right, Ethan. If we applied in round 1 but didn't score well, we only got 40% of our eligible expenses. That happened, Ethan. You're in the boat with a lot of people. Is there a way to find out in what categories we didn't do so well that we can focus on improving our round 2 application? Yes, you can. You can reach out to Ray, which is, I think, grants at, he's basically the grants manager. And you can ask him, hey, can we get the notes and feedback from our application to understand why we scored low? And he should be able to provide that for you, but be patient because Ray is managing a lot right now, and we should all, thank you, Ray. Okay, so be kind, be patient with that, but you can find out. And then when you get your scope of work, back to you, which is basically hey, you got a grant award and we're going to give you a check for this amount of money. It will actually show you where they took your money from so that you can know where your gap is, which is great, right? Maybe they paid you just for payroll, but they didn't include your rent or utilities. Well, now you can apply for your rent and utilities, but you need to look at your award from round 1 to figure out what they cut to ask for it in round 2. So I hope that helps. Moving on. All right. So like I said, there's 3 grant applications. You're going to choose for nonprofit, creative business, individual artist, but the questions are nearly the same. The arguments are nearly the same. So this is where I want you to pay attention. even though we coach it in the nonprofit space first, but it completely applies to creative businesses and individual artists. So there's a review criteria that we go through to score your application. That way it's fair, it's equitable. We do it by a panelist from the community. We combine scores, we aggregate them. Like, there's a lot of work that happens in a panel, and usually it's all volunteers who do the work, and they're usually professionals from within the industry. So they all have experience with this. So this grant is worth 50 points total. You get 40 points for your organizational narrative. And what panelists are looking for is that the loss to COVID-19 is very clear and demonstrable. That CARES Act dollars, if awarded, will provide relief to the organization or the artist or the business. That the organization, artist, or business was in sustainable financial condition prior to March 1st, and that you contribute to the creative economy. We're going to talk about what that means very clearly. But you need to show them that you've been in business before March 1st and that you were sustainable. You know, thriving, right? We can all question what that means, right? Because thriving to one person is not as to the same, but that you were sustainable and you were in business and you were making it happen for yourself and your team, if you have one. We have to ensure that you, as an artist, a creative business, or an organization, that your practices align with the Commission's race and cultural equity statement. And we're going to go over that line by line. And how do you plug in? Lastly, your mission or your services, right, must in some way support the development, production, or presentation of arts or cultural activities and disciplines, right? Arts disciplines for the Commission include dance, theater, visual, literary, media, film, music, cultural, and traditional arts. What's not on that list, right? Culinary arts, the floral arts, barbershop arts, hair arts, that kind of stuff, right? We have to kind of protect our space a little bit because there's only so much money, that this is what we have included as arts disciplines. Culture, right, kind of speaks for itself, right? We have a lot of cultural events, cultural organizations that meet together. That is also defined and eligible to apply. And then lastly, you get 10 points for eligibility. Did you follow instructions? Did you provide the right documentation? So, alrighty, let's keep going. All right. So when you are on Submittable, you're going to click your category. Am I creative business? Am I an artist? Am I a nonprofit? Real quick, what is the difference between a creative business and an individual artist? This has come up several times. I'm going to talk about it after we get through the nonprofit part, but essentially you decide. Most individual working artists get 1099s. And you consider yourself a sole proprietor. Some of you, it's like you have one bank account and all the money comes into one bank account and that's your bank account and you live off it. Other people have a business account and then a personal account, right? If you're routing your money through a business account and you pay only for business expenses out of your business account and not your personal account, you're probably a creative business. Now, when AB 5 legislation happened and it sort of has decimated the contractors, teaching artists, musicians, the gig economy, right? This happened in January. We had this big rush. A lot of us, like me, I was solely working off 1099s as an individual artist. I knew that legislation was coming down and that I was also at a place in my business where I could grow. So I incorporated and am now an LLC, and I have QuickBooks. I have my own business account. I have to pay money to the state. I have a whole different federal filing tax system. So I am now just a creative business, and I don't really operate like an individual artist anymore. Some of us operate as an individual artist and as a creative business, right? So this is just to say that you have to decide. There we go. Okay. So when you're in Submittable, after you fill out your basic data, you're going to arrive to this screen. It's going to ask for your organization name, or if you're an artist or a creative business, you need to put in your legal name. That's your legal name that appears on your tax forms. It's really important because there's systems in the back that match, right? And they're very specific about your legal name. So, we also are going to ask what district you're in, and you can click this little red button to find out. You put in your address and it'll tell you what district you're in. I'm in District 4 as a creative business. Again, artists have to live and reside in the city limits. Creative businesses have to have an office in the city limits, and nonprofits have to have an office in the city business. And because it's city money, the spirit is that we are really serving Sacramentans. Even though we know that our business comes from all over and from other states, you know, we sometimes can't control that, but our heart is Sacramento. Okay? This is the amount requested for reimbursement. So you put in your total reimbursement that you're requesting, that you've added up, and just make sure that you don't double dip with the funds that you already received, if you did at all, to cover any of these costs. Like some of us got PPP loans, some of us got EIDL loans or SBA loans, or the first round of the city money, or the first round of the creative economy grants. Whatever you do, don't double dip. You're gonna have to figure out that math for yourself, okay? Next, when you get to here, it's gonna ask you this screen. It's gonna say, did you receive a round 1 creative economy grant? If yes, how much? Did you receive any other federal CARES money, like no, PPP, EIDL? If yes, how much, right? And then they want to know the number of full-time equivalent employees that were employed on September 1st, right? So let's see what FTE means, because they have a definition. When you go to the arts website, you can also download the grant guidelines, and the guidelines break down all this information for you, right? You're like, well, what's FTE, full-time equivalency, right? They define that for you. Typically, it's the 40-hour-a-week salary job. Maybe it's not salary, it could be on a time card too, right? But you're a full-time employee if you're working 40 hours a week. We want to know how many full-time employees do you have. If you're an individual artist, you have one, yourself, right? All righty. All right, the next screen that everybody is going to get to is, what's your supplier number for the city of Sacramento? And you're like, oh my God, I don't have this. And then you click on the button and you're like, oh my God, I don't, like, you freak out, right? If you have it, you put, yeah, and go find your number and put it in. If you don't have it, you say not applicable or NA, and that just tells them you don't have it yet. It's not going to unfairly score you or kick you out. We just need to know who has it, who doesn't have it, so that we can help you, okay? Then it says, do you have the business occupancy tax on file with the city? Do you have a BOT or a BOT exemption if you're a nonprofit? So you should know that, yes or no. Again, if it's a no, put no. Not going to hurt you. Okay. Questions? I think we're doing good. We want to get to this part, which is the narrative, the writing part, the thing that stresses everybody out. Okay. So basically, there's 4 questions, 5 kind of questions. The total of those questions is 1,000 to 1,100 words. That is not a lot of words. That is a blessing and a curse. So the blessing is you don't get to be long-winded. You're not writing a 40-page thesis. The bad news is you better be succinct and concise. So I'm going to give you some examples today. Just to give you a ballpark figure, 1,000 words on a single sheet of paper, double-spaced, is about 3 to 3.5 pages at Times New Roman size 12. So basically, you're in it for 3 to 3.5 pages of writing. You don't have to go to the max limit. I do, because I want to make every single argument so that they don't tell me no. So that's my mindset. So I'm going to cheerlead you to this because you can do it. You can answer 4 questions. I promise you, you can. Okay. Nonprofit reimbursement is basically a description of your organization and how you contribute to the creative economy. Then you describe the community you serve in 100 words. Then you're going to describe how your organization's practices align with the race and cultural equity statement, 250 words. And then you're going to describe how you experienced financial hardship, the pivot that you made, and what you're asking for and why. That is essentially what we ask the individual artists. But instead of the brief description of your organization, we want to know what artistic discipline you're in. We also want your brief artist bio. And then pretty much from there, it's the same thing. How do you contribute to the creative economy? How are you aligned with our race and cultural equity statement? And how have you experienced financial hardship? Okay. For-profit creative business, pretty much the exact same thing. What artistic field are you in? What does your business do? And how are you contributing to the creative economy? We also want to know the community you serve. So you can replace that for who are your clients? As a creative business, who are your clients, right? How do your business practices align with our race and cultural equity statement? And how have you experienced hardship? So I hope you can see they're pretty much the same questions. And that's what we're going to go over. All right. I want to do this with the nonprofit lens first, because this is where we plug and play. So it does pertain to you. All right. So my first one here is question 1, Mad Libs, right? Provide a brief description of your organization and its contribution to Sacramento's creative economy. So let's hold up for a second. What is the creative economy? What is the creative economy? I'm seeing if I can get it back up to my chat here. There we go. I'm going to my chat. Shira asked, will the slides be shared? Yes, they will. And we're recording this too. Thanks for asking. And Shira, what is the creative economy? I'm going to totally put you on the spot.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. Hi. The creative economy, I think that is a great question, and it's really hard to define, but according to what was placed here, it is artists, muralists. I mean, I think there was like a definition in here.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you were talking about, going back to that definition?
Yeah, I would say like just as a whole, like the creative economy, right, is just who is contributing to the arts.
Yeah.
It's socially and economically.
So am I still supposed to answer this question? Because it's a hard question.
That's okay. I'll take you off the hook.
No, but like, I think the creative economy is, yeah, if you contribute culturally, if you contribute artistically to it. So if that is anything in the arts, but again, then it can flow into culinary arts really easily. So, and when I think of the creative economy, I'm also including, and this is just my definition, I'm also including, what about graphic designers? Where does that fall in? Then it gets into from graphic designers to web designers. Some web designers are kind of creative, and then you've got animators who do animation, and that's creative. So I think it's how you see yourself within the creative community, and I think it's best to say how you contribute to the creative community is where I would kind of say it.
Yep,
yeah?
Absolutely. So we know that the arts are an engine for a city to thrive. I want you to imagine a city with no arts, no culture, nothing to do, nowhere to eat, nothing to see and experience, right? If you were to take all that stuff away from a city, like who goes and shops? How does the city make revenue? How do we pay for taxes? Like, it's a pretty big deal. So we know that the creative economy fuels cities and floods them with money because it supports systems, it supports taxes, it supports business owners. It just keeps money revolving and moving. So we are all a part of the creative economy for sure. Let's see here. So it says, provide a brief description of your organization and its contributions to Sacramento's creative economy. 250 words. So I've made up an organization called ABC 123. This is the Mad Libs version. ABC 123 is to, and then you insert your mission. We primarily do this by, tell us what you do. We're committed to our mission because, why are you committed to your mission? Are you filling a gap? Are you solving a problem, right? And then ABC 123 contributes to Sacramento's creative economy by creating positive social and economic impacts. Socially, we, and you insert your success outcomes. And I'm going to give you a whole paragraph after this so you see how it all comes together. We elevate the profiles of unknown working artists, helping them gain critical exposure to the marketplace. Or we provide 900 hours of arts-based instruction to 3 Title I elementary schools. These are called social outcomes, which is like, what do you do that helps society? Okay. Economically, we, and then insert ways that you fuel money into the city. You have to think about it from the side of the funders too, right? And this is a city municipality funder. They're in it for taxes and revenue as a bottom line economic indicator. So you could do that through employment. We hire teaching artists, professionals. We generate ticket sales. We attract tourists and visitors. We capture other foundation, federal, and state dollars. We provide essential services to working artists like studio space so that they can generate income and tax dollars. We engage in workforce development with the arts work that we do. We leverage public dollars to help families achieve what we call upward mobility, which means that they get to be successful and earn something and make something of themselves. So those are some different examples. I want you to use them. And then let's look at how I answered that question. This is exactly 250 words. So ABC 123's mission is to increase literacy rates for 4th graders in the region or in the Sacramento region through creative writing and innovative reading methods. We primarily do this by, 1, providing creative and writing workshops and after-school settings that transform students into confident published authors. 2, training public school teachers on how to incorporate playful and arts-based writing strategies in the classroom. 3, offering family story nights that incorporate reading strategies, theater and improv games, and oral storytelling projects that kids then illustrate, perform, and or reinterpret through artistic means. We are committed to our mission because literacy, self and societal expression through writing and stories, and healthy communication matters for a healthy democracy and prosperous populace. Basically, I've made the argument there is you want smart residents. There you go. Unfortunately, nearly 2/3 of Sacramento's 4th graders cannot write or read at grade level. This milestone matters because research has proven that 75% of children not at grade level will never recover. This impedes our youth's chances at thriving and becoming successful. ABC 123 contributes to Sacramento's creative economy by creating positive social and economic impacts. For example, socially, we provide 900 hours of art-based instruction to 6 Title I public elementary schools, serving nearly 1,200 4th graders a year. Economically, our education and enrichment services leverage nearly $150,000 in local education dollars through fee-for-service contracts with federal grant dollars, private foundation grants, and other individual donor contributions that we fundraise throughout the year for. We transform that $150,000 into nearly $525,000, which is $375,000 more dollars for helping Sacramento youth connect real-life skills through artistic expression and innovative methods. Every single one of these were one of those Mad Lib sentence starters from the last screen, right? We do this. Here's what we do. Here's why we do it. Here's how we're successful socially. And here's ways that we fuel money into the city. 250 words. So if you're a nonprofit and you're really uncomfortable writing grants, I want you to plug and play. I want you to go sentence by sentence and think, okay, how does that happen at my organization? Right? Use the language, play with it. You don't have to start from scratch. All right, the next question that comes up is briefly describe the community that you serve in 100 words. This is 100 words. It's one paragraph. This is hard to do. When funders ask this question all the time, who do you serve? Who are your audiences? Funders and panelists are looking for the economic demographics for race and ethnicity, the location, super important. Where do you do your work? How many people do you serve annually, right? Do you serve specific identity-based populations, right? Like immigrants, LGBTQ, are there special populations that you tailor to? Also, like, what does your community or your clients struggle with that you help them, right? Access, abuse, racism, stigma, etc. So individual artists, you don't have to answer this question. We don't need to know who your customers are. Creative businesses, you do have to answer this question. One, because these are public dollars and they're tied to the Creative Edge plan and they're tied to the Office of Arts and Culture's commitment to be equitable, inclusive, diverse, and serve all people. Businesses aren't really typically held to that standard. And so we sort of are. We're saying if you're going to use these public grant dollars, we want to ensure that you really are serving the right people that we also want to serve as funders. So a way for a creative business to think about that is, who are your clients? And I'm going to give you an example of that towards the end. So for the nonprofit, ABC 123 annually serves 1,200 fourth graders who are academically behind in literacy. We work in 6 public elementary schools throughout South Sacramento: Oak Park, Franklin Boulevard, Meadowview, and Hollywood Park. Now, if I'm a funder and a panelist, and I'm from Sacramento, which usually the panelists know Sacramento pretty well, I'm like, oh, I know those neighborhoods, and already I have a rough idea about the population in those neighborhoods, right? 100% of the youth we serve are on free and or reduced lunch. That means that they're living at some poverty level according to federal and state guidelines. And 70% of our families report making less than $50,000 a year. ABC 123 serves a diverse youth population, mirroring the rich cultural diversity of Sacramento. That's like buzzword language, and it's in a lot of grants, right? Because we're a pretty culturally diverse city. And as a city, as a funder, we want to make sure that we're reaching all people in our city. So I break it down even further. I'm like, 40% of our youth are Black, 23% identify as non-white, Hispanic, or Latinx, 21% Southeast Asian of Hmong, Mien, and Vietnamese, and the other 16% is a mix of white, Russian, Slavic, and or Pacific Islander. So I've broken it down for them in 100 words so they very specifically know who we serve. So I wanted to give you some other ideas down here of what to do. Like, I didn't really bring in identity markers. I didn't bring in what they struggle with because I was sort of stronger on more of the numerical data. You may not be strong in the numerical data because you might not know. If you don't know, that's okay. We want you to make your best guesstimate, right? Be honest, and then talk about what they struggle with in a very real way. You don't have to have all this data, so don't stress out about that. All right, checking on the chat, good. So question number 3, this is a doozy. So briefly describe how your organization's practices align with the Sacramento Arts, Culture, and Creative Economy, ACCE, Commission's Race and Cultural Equity Statement in 250 words. We want to know, how do you align with our values and practices? This is the statement. So I'm not going to read the statement because I've already broken it down in the next slide for us, but you can find this statement at this link and website, which is clickable, and it's also on the Office of Arts and Culture site. It has a lot of definitions at the bottom, how they define diversity, how they define communities, stuff like that. How it breaks down for us is right here. I need to move my little thing again. There we go. Okay. So there are about 4 lines in there that they're really speaking to, and here they are. So you have to echo some of these statements in your language, and you need to tie them to a very tangible way that you as an artist, as a business, as an organization, and acts or does that belief? So, number one is from the statement. All Sacramentans have the right to celebrate and engage in meaningful and relevant arts and cultural experiences. Example, ABC 123's Family Story Nights provide a meaningful and relevant artistic experience that helps a family celebrate the power of their story, heritage, and identity together. So I've said, here's what we do that relates to that statement, very tangibly. The next one is from the statement, the arts experience reflects and nourishes a Sacramentan's identity and self-esteem. Example, well, our creative writing workshops use a research-based workshop strategy developed by Amherst Writers and Artists Method and published by Oxford University. That just gave a whole lot of credibility to it. That encourages positive growth through affirmation techniques and self-esteem building. We also use youth development best practices that build positive internal and external assets necessary for kids to succeed. That's a mouthful. Another one, and this should be 3, not 4, so you didn't miss one. Ensure racial and cultural equity in outreach, leadership, partnership, and programs. I paraphrase that. So show how is your board and leadership team comprised of unique individuals that represent diverse perspectives. I say we seek collaborations that strengthen our programs, ensuring that teaching artists, volunteers, and other practitioners who interface with our students reflect the racial and cultural needs of the youth we serve. For example, 75% of our volunteers and teaching artists are professionals of color and or have an identity that has grappled with stigma and systemic barriers. Systemic barriers is a fancy way to say, yeah, it's hard to participate in that because people like me typically don't do that. And usually there are barriers to that. Our values, vision, and decision-making method as an organization has equity built into every aspect, where we consistently ask ourselves, is what we are offering relevant to this population's needs? Is it easy to register, low cost and or free? Is it available in different languages? And is it in an easy to travel to location? You can literally use this language, just be honest. Do you do this, right? Are you committed to equity, inclusion, and diversity? And lastly, one of the other lines that they have in here, which would be point number 4 that I took, is we engage in cultural equity by inclusion and fair representation of multiple diverse populations in outreach and programs, providing equitable and fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented full participation of some communities. So an example of that could be, how do you do outreach, right? How do you ensure that you're trying to reach a lot of people and a broad amount of people? And how do you do that as a creative business, right? Well, you probably do marketing, you probably do networking, you know, are you being inclusive and diverse in where you go? So for ABC 123, the marketing and outreach department views equity and inclusion as a cornerstone to engaging our population. We offer materials in multiple languages, Spanish, Hmong, Mien, and Vietnamese. We advertise in grocery and corner stores. We, and free publications like the Penny Saver, the SNR, Inside, and or at community or health centers. All services are provided free for students and families, and we offer a sliding scale for professional development services and trainings for public school educators. Nobody is denied access within our organization, and we actively seek to be inclusive and accept a wide range of values, beliefs, identities, and perspectives. Those are some examples, and I want to show you how that breaks down to 248 words. I had to cut. I'm not going to reread this again, but I took some of those real tangible things, and here are your sentence starters. ABC 123 is invested in providing equitable access, right, for all Sacramento youth educators and families who want our programs or want our services. We're committed to inclusivity. And a few examples of that are, and then give them examples, right? So that's how they want you to break it down. And again, for an individual artist and a creative business, you need to figure out how you fit in, right? How are you meeting your audiences and your clients? Do you turn away work because you don't align with them? Like, think about those kind of things. All right, I am going to check the chat. Here we go. All right. Will the slides be shared? Yes, they'll be shared. All right, so on this last one, Doug asked, sorry, can you go back to the last slide for a second, the one on number 3? Let me go back. This one, I think, Doug, right? Ensure the racial and cultural equity and outreach leadership.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Right? So you really just have to make an argument. How are you equitable and inclusive? Are you diverse? Are you a person of color yourself, right? Like, it's funny because I go and I train people how to do this, and then, you know, I'll be on a phone call where I can't see anybody's faces, and they will literally like start laughing and be like, we're all Black. I'm like, okay, great. Like, you need to talk about who comprises of your leadership team and your belief about, you know, if it's part of Build Black. So you have to do that. You have to show how you're including other perspectives and people, and that you're not denying people. Now, when it comes to a creative business, you have to charge money for services. You might not be doing things on a sliding scale. That's okay. We understand that. But if you're a creative business who's going to get a piece of this money, you must be committed to this. So figure it out. I also will give another example when we move toward the creative business and individual artist one. All right, let me move this down. So Katie asked me a question privately, and I'll get that to you. Essentially, yes, we'll get to that at the end. Okay, moving on. Sentence starters for question number 4. This is the 500-word question. It's the one that they say the panel relies on the heaviest to score you for funding, okay? You have to describe how you or the organization or the business experienced a financial hardship, like loss of income and that ongoing payments in order that incurred due to canceled arts and cultural things because of the mandated restrictions between this day and this date, right? So here are some handy sentence starters for you to use. Due to COVID-19 and mandated closures, ABC 123 experienced financial hardship, ... And then essentially ABC 123 was unable to ... In order to serve our clients and students, we pivoted to ... You may not have pivoted. That's okay. We were unable to open and have been waiting in the wings until we can meet again or gather again. We were able to maintain emergency general operations by, we purchased the following items, equipment, services. We request funds to be reimbursed these costs, which were not covered by. You're giving them that one more indication. We're not double dipping. And this is the last one. This is the heart tugger, right? Without reimbursement, we will struggle to blah, blah, blah. Here it is, 407 words out of 500. So you still get 93 words to play with. Let's read it. Due to COVID-19 and mandated closures, ABC 123 experienced excessive financial hardship. You can totally just use that line. Essentially, we were unable to fulfill education and grant contracts due to mandated school and public space closures. We lost both contributed and earned revenue, roughly $225,000, that sustains both our general and programmatic operations. In order to serve our students and educators, we pivoted to online workshops through a new digital platform, mailed writing and art kits home to our students, and provided a street team to check on the welfare of our students and families during this hard time. We also started a YouTube TV channel with writing prompts, whimsy, and fun for easy access at any time to any child. Our students and families struggle with digital access, and they don't often have high bandwidth and or multiple computers and or tablets to access online content. The street team was invaluable in keeping a strong connection to our students as they wore PPE gear to check in on families during this time. We found that our families were struggling beyond the digital divide. Many of our families lost employment and are suffering economically to provide for their kids. To that end, we partnered with the Resilient Food Network to provide food assistance and meals. We also partnered with A1 Tutoring, a private entity, to offer free tutoring sessions online in English-based subjects to help keep our vulnerable students engaged in literary learning. And they were unable to meet the demand. On a pro bono basis. So we supplemented their work with a small stipend of $5,000 to provide 300 hours of free one-to-one instruction. I should have clarified that that was for the A1 tutoring. So far, we have reached 468 families with these services. We were able to maintain emergency general operations by paying essential staff, teaching artists who were able to create online content, and our general overhead obligations of rent, insurance, and utilities. We purchased equipment, cameras, lights, microphones, a screen, and editing tools and apps. We also purchased a fun online learning platform, BirdFango, to deliver curriculum and create community. The bad news is that we had to dip into the little reserves that we had to keep going, which jeopardizes our future even further. However, without dipping into reserves, we feared losing our students and families and overall mission-based work during this critical time. We request funds to reimburse all these costs, which were not covered by other CARES Act funds, and without reimbursement, we will struggle to maintain operations into October 2020 and beyond. That's 407 words. So you can kind of see the sentence starters in there and how you build that argument. It's really linear, it's really clear, okay? As a creative business, you may not have 500 words to contribute, right? You're going to talk about your loss of contracts, the clients, the struggles you've had with getting clients, the struggles your clients have had in hiring you, and what that's really done to your business, right? For an individual artist, it's the same thing. I have hardship. I have studio space that I can't even access, and yet I still have to pay for it because rent is hard to find in Sacramento. All that kind of stuff, which I'll give examples coming up. Okay, let's see if I can do this right here. Sometimes my mouse just really doesn't like me in the sharing part. Oops, see, I have to share. There we go. Let's see if I can go back to the chat. Here we go. All right. Yay, and thank you, Katie, for the fabulous workshop. Okay, thanks. Moving on. All right, those were the 4 main questions, you guys. That was it. It goes super fast. And again, steal, right? Like, you're like, oh my God, Katie, you're a writer, and you're like telling us to plagiarize. You know what? We just simply don't have time. So you need to be honest. You need to do what works for you. You need to steal sentence starters. You need to fill in the blank, right? And in some ways, you need to speak their language. I am speaking their language for you to make the arguments. Plug and play as you need, okay? Then a nonprofit will tell you, you'll have to put in what your operating budget was, and this is a mistake. It says 2009 operating budget. Ray is on the back end fixing that right now. They just want to know what your operating budget was. For creatives and individuals are gonna, I think for creative businesses, they'll ask you what your anticipated revenue was. They may not even ask that question even more. And then this is where you're going to upload your documentation cover sheet into one PDF. One PDF. Right? We'll talk about that in a minute. And then you, as a nonprofit, you have to upload your 501c3 IRS letter. There's some optional demographic information, and you submit. It is a super fast application. The not fast part is the writing, and it's really collecting your documentation. All right, going to the chat. Okay. No, this is moving forward. Be sure not to duplicate expenses. Ray said don't duplicate expenses, right? Okay, well, we know that, all right. Okay, I think we're right. Okie dokie. Oh, I think he may have just said something back to me. Oh, Zoom. Oh, on the budget is what Shira said. Yeah, they're not really going to ask you for the budget. Okay. Katie says, if you were funded for a portion of the expenses last round, can you apply for the funds that were not reimbursed, right? Like, so a creative business applied for 10K last round, but they only got in 7K. Can we apply for the remaining 3 of the gap? Yes, you can. Absolutely. It's any reimbursable expenses between March 1st and September 15th. So I'm so grateful that they were smart enough to think about that, and they didn't just blanketly make it July 1st to September 15th. So that's smart. All right, now let's talk about the for-profit people, the creative businesses and the individual artists. Like I said, it's pretty much the same questions, right? So individual artists can get reimbursed for business expenses, not living expenses, business expenses, and for lost gigs and contracts that you have proof for. Creative businesses can get reimbursed for their general operating expenses, and that's very similar to the nonprofit model that we just looked at, right? Essential payroll, utilities, insurances, pivot equipment, things you had to buy and maintain during the pandemic and the closures. All right, I've defined a creative business here for you from the Office of Arts and Culture. Because like I said, you might be like, am I a creative business or am I an independent artist, right? So a creative business is also known as a firm, an association, an organization, a partnership, a LLC, that's what I am, right? But also you're a creative business that has to serve particularly those that serve inclusive, culturally diverse communities and neighborhoods that have suffered a loss due to COVID-19. Really, this grant is meant for those creative businesses that serve clients who serve underserved Sacramentans in our neighborhoods, and that your clients are diverse and you are inclusive. That's the differentiation. Creative businesses cannot apply for lost contracts, lost sales, or revenue. Just like a nonprofit can't apply for a lost contract or a lost grant or a lost revenue. Only individual artists can do that. So, like I said, you're a creative business if you operate as a business, not an individual. You are an independent artist, typically if you are paid on 1099s. However, if you're paid on 1099s and you consider yourself a creative business and you sort of set up your life that way, where you have like your business account and you have your personal account, right? And you keep that money flow separate, you could consider yourself a creative business. You can apply for both. Even though I only said you could do one application, you can apply for both, but don't ask for duplicate reimbursement. Okay, I'm going to the chat. Here we go. As an individual artist, can we include the costs necessary to pivot into a new way to create income as well as lost gigs? So, Ray says, always remember that if the city or you are audited, we have to be able to demonstrate that we didn't reimburse the same expense more than once. Yes, that is true. All right, so Janine, you maybe had to buy equipment to turn and go online, right? Or maybe you created some mailing component to your business, right? Those can be reimbursable, but it has to be tied to the pandemic. If it comes to buying a bunch of art supplies for yourself, right? To say, well, I'm going to create this whole new line, that probably isn't going to fly with the city auditors and the attorney. You'd be creating basically a new line of business rather than really pivoting what you do to the online space during the pandemic. I hope that makes sense for you. Katie, will there be future rounds of reimbursement grants? No, this is the final one. Janine, she says, my expenses are as an individual artist. A, lost gigs. B, operating expenses that are included in a Schedule C. Love it, they are using Schedule C terminology. And C, expenses required to create a new source of income, like making face masks. Can I include all three of these types of expenses in this round? Yes, you can. You can. All right, another one. From So. I live and work in my art studio. Can I get art studio rent reimbursement? Yes, you can. Yep, many artists do that, right? Just be really clear. I mean, the IRS would say that your home office space shouldn't be more than 20% of your overall blah, blah, blah. It's like so irritating. But,
can I just add to that?
Yeah, add to that, Ray, because I know that's true.
Yeah, if you itemize your taxes to include your art studio space as a write-off, you can include that, but you'll have to show that at least last year's taxes that you have done that before the pandemic. Same way, if you pay yourself as an artist, you would have to demonstrate that through your prior taxes.
Yeah. Yep. And that's if you get audited, right? but you have to be able to demonstrate it.
Actually, I think the city attorney is asking that you upload a copy of that schedule showing that you've done that.
Yeah. Okay. That is great to know. So you do fill out a Schedule C when you file your taxes, which a lot of 1099 artists and creatives do. I did it for years, right? I'm filling out my taxes, and that's where you basically are putting in your deductions for being an artist or a creative business. As a sole proprietor, you basically generate a Schedule C, and it will tell you how much you allocate your business space to your home. Great to know. Okay. So the narrative here, this is just sort of a repeat slide, right? For individual artists and for-profit creative business, the first question you get is, what is the artistic discipline or area of the arts-based work? What do you do? I'm a potter, I'm a painter, I'm a dancer. Provide a brief artist bio. This is for the artist individual side. Provide a brief artist bio and explain how you contribute to the creative economy. Same thing for-profit creative business. Tell us about your business and how you contribute. The work then continues to be the same. How do you align with the race and cultural equity statement, and how do you describe your financial hardship? For-profit creative businesses, we need to know the community that you serve. Who are your clients? All right. Now, don't get mad at me. This is not me being self-promotional. I have just spent a lot of time writing my own bio as an artist and writing what my business does. So I'm not trying to promote myself or anything, even though if you know me in the city, I am fearless and I believe in self-advocacy because I grew up poor, and if you ain't gonna advocate for yourself, nobody is. So I encourage you to always self-advocate too, and I put my stuff in here. There we are. Okay, so for a creative business, you need to describe a description of your business in 250 words. I have this orange box on the bottom that says, think about how your business helps the social and economic sector. Do you help generate income for your clients? Do you work in tourism and attract visitors to the city? Do you provide training that is essential to helping people or other businesses thrive, right? So here's mine. Paper Wings Creative Consulting LLC provides creative, literary, and public relations services to nonprofits, educators, social entrepreneurs, and change makers invested in solving critical social problems. For the past 4 years, we've provided innovative storytelling projects through print media, podcasts, and digital content that amplify our clients' positive impacts. In addition, we facilitate strategic planning, fund development, program design, and tailored trainings to help our clients and their boards scale to serve more people. Clients include Wind Youth Center, Improve Your Tomorrow, Capitol Radio, California Relief, City of Sacramento, Crocker Art, blah, 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 right? I've shown them who my clients are, which are all in the nonprofit space. They're serving very diverse clienteles. We contribute to the creative economy by paying taxes, creating jobs, and activating others to hire people, engage residents in projects that help them grow socially and economically, and we energize spaces that have been under-resourced and underutilized. That's my simple thing. It's probably 185 words. Let's talk about how that works as an individual artist. This is way longer, forgive me. So I don't really want to read it, but essentially, this is who I am. I have this sort of thesis statement, right? And a lot of us artists have that, right? Like, what's your mission? Well, I'm a social entrepreneur and change maker driven to make the world less lonely and more connected through the sharing of authentic stories by diverse and unique voices. And then I'm the founder of, I do this, I've been featured here, I'm working on this, I serve here, right? And then at the end, I say, I contribute to Sacramento's creative economy by amplifying the social and creative work of other Sacramentans. I pay taxes and I provide valuable trainings that help others create wealth. So, you know, these things are all sort of about how much, I call it stage time, right? When you're on a stage and you shine that light on the stage, right? How much light time are you giving to these things, to yourself, to your bio, to how you contribute to the creative economy, right? So if you're really uncomfortable with like, I don't know how I contribute to the creative economy, and you only have like 3 to 4 sentences, then amp up who you are and what you've done. You have to celebrate yourself. This is just a level of professionalism that I think a lot of us are really uncomfortable with, and I was uncomfortable with for a very long time. So advocate for yourself. I know we were taught not to do that. You have to. Like, it's a competition at the end of the day, and show off who you are. We know you're doing good work. Okay, before I go there, I'm gonna head up to the chat. I wanna keep us on time because I know it's a lot of information. Okay, Shira, would you need to upload just the Schedule C or all tax returns? Probably.
I think just the Schedule C. Sorry.
Just the Schedule C, okay. If we didn't ask for reimbursement in the first round for the home office, can we apply in the second round? Yeah, you just can't duplicate. Is the cap for individual artists at $10,000? They didn't give a cap, right? It happens in the panels where we say, okay, how much money did people ask for? How much money do we give away? And how do we figure out how to make it all balance out based off the scores? So that happens in panels. Yes, Janine, women are not taught to advocate for themselves. I also have met a lot of men too who don't. So we all kind of struggle, but you're right. I was taught to be meek and quiet and in the background, and that's clearly not who I am. All right, moving on. So now we have this creative businesses for 100 words. Individual artists, you don't have to answer this question, but essentially we're asking, who are your clients, right? Well, I did mention my clients when I talked about my services under Paper Wings Creative. So Paper Wings Creative Consulting LLC has a long history in the neighborhoods of Sacramento. Our founder and principal, Katie McCleary, spent 8 years working as a non-traditional educator in Del Paso Heights and then another 10 years in South Sacramento and under-resourced neighborhoods, and I should have put as an executive director of an arts nonprofit. 100% of my clients are nonprofit and or not-for-profit. Every client serves diverse people who struggle to overcome an obstacle. Those obstacles are racial discrimination, gender abuse, mental health stigma, and educational inequity. Our role is to help them with tools and strategies that work to amplify their impact and better their programs to reach the vulnerable. Pretty concise, right? It's your moment to show us how you are invested in equity, inclusivity, and access. Who are your clients? Briefly describe, right? So again, I just sort of copied from that other question above. How do we fit into that race and cultural equity statement? These are the 4 primary statements that I have pulled out from that 1-page document. Half the document is definitions, which if you're unclear, right? Like, how do we define a community? How do we define diversity? That is there for you. But I want you as a grant writer to look at these 4 things and say, all right, how do I fit? How do I align as an artist and as a creative individual? So I feel like I already kind of made that argument for you before up there. Go back to the nonprofit one and you'll be able to just pull stuff out and play with it like Play-Doh and make it to what you need. All right, again, the same handy sentence starters for when we get to question 4, right? Due to COVID-19, I experienced hardship. Essentially, I was unable to. For individual artists only, I lost blank dollars in lost gigs and contracts. I would even say as a creative business, like I was so bummed because I lost a contract for like $37,000. And then I lost another contract, which was my first biggest 6-figure contract ever due to COVID. So I had almost like $200,000 of work that I lost that I've never made that much money in my life. And as a creative business, I couldn't apply for it. It literally like hit me in the heart, like really bad. So that sucks. However, individual artists, we struggle in a different way versus the creative business. I will argue for that. So as a creative business, what I'm saying though is you can say, yeah, Paper Wings Creative lost almost $2,000 in $200,000 in contracts. And that was devastating to my business. But I kept paying myself, I kept paying my insurance, and that's what I get to be reimbursed for. So in order to serve my clients' customers, I pivoted to, I purchased this equipment to help with, I maintained essential operations, right? All those same things as we found in the nonprofit one. So I made this little thing, right? Like artists, explain every contract, gig, and commission that was lost and the amount to be paid, right? Just be specific about how they really impacted your ability, right? I mean, if, you know, how have you survived the mandated closures financially as an independent artist? What might happen if you were unable to keep working as an individual artist in Sacramento? Like, we're done bleeding out artists and creatives here and losing them to LA and San Francisco. So we want to keep you here, make the argument for us to keep you here. And, right, so I have more questions there. What were some necessary expenditures to continue, you know, if you're a teaching artist or to produce art in the future for your clients? Do you have to pay studio rent, all that stuff? Creative businesses, again, you want to explain each reimbursement and how it was a necessary expense for you to maintain your general operations, any pivots you made to stay open, amplify the diversity of your clientele. Did you keep employees working? Did you keep contractors paid? Did you buy equipment, protective stuff? All that stuff matters here. So I have a couple short samples, super short. You know, as a working artist, I suffered a loss of income due to this. I'm a freelance creative writer and essayist. I'm also a teaching artist for 916 Inc. and other arts organizations in the city. As a freelancer, I rely on this. Essentially, I lost $37,000 of this. I was unable to file for unemployment. I haven't had any financial assistance. Like, tell the story because you might get money. And the creative business is sort of the same, right? Like, due to us, we were unable to do our storytelling content for social change makers who work or reside in low-income communities. You know, nearly 80% of my clients reside in the promised zone. They were forced to close. We were forced to close. So just build that picture for us. It's pretty much the same as kind of the nonprofit one. Again, use these sentence starters, right? Fill in the blank. Make it a Mad Libs game. So this answer is the same as the question 4 answer. So it's just a repeat. All right. Your documentation. This is what it looks like now. It tells you your eligible expenses at the bottom. And it is very time consuming to collect all these things and to keep them organized. Try to be like the most organized person that you can, which I know is really hard for a lot of us. It's hard for me. So, right, like, oh, these are all the insurance receipts. These are all the rent receipts. These are all the utility receipts. These are all the payroll stuff, right? Like, one, all here, boom. This, all here, boom, right? And one after the other. I wrote like cover sheets, like line item 1, insurances, total amount, and then behind it was like receipt, 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 and then like highlighted bank statement. Then another cover page that had like payroll, right? From this paycheck to this paycheck period, a total of 8 checks, right? And then you have the payroll journal behind that, or you could have like deposits into your bank account or, you know, expenses out of your bank account. Either way, whatever you show. Just the point is to be organized, like really organized. One PDF to upload, this cover sheet has to be on it. So today there's some more, the overview workshops are done. You're at this Friday grant writing workshop. I'm giving this again on Monday night. Then there's a bunch of drop-in support on Zoom during these times for you to help write your application. Plus, if you go to the Office of Arts and Culture website, there's these 15 or 30-minute mentor meetings that you can book to call some of the mentors. The mentors are awesome. I'm a mentor. Estella Sanchez is a mentor. Richard Falcone is a mentor. Stacy Shellman Hendricks is a mentor. There's a whole list of them. And you can actually talk to us and be like, hey, can I run through my grant with you? Lots of people called me last time. Some people even sent it to me, and in our 15 minutes together, I edited it for them. So there's all kinds of ways that you can use us as mentors to get help. Even if you need to call and cry and say, I'm stuck, I don't know how to write, I will coach you through it. The timeline is this. So you're going to submit by the 30th. The staff has to review and go through and make sure it's all correct. Then the panel has to go and do their review and reading. Then they have the panels, which is an open discussion. You can log on in and hear what they say about you. And then they have to bring all those recommendations to the special commission meeting, and the commissioners have to approve the allocations. So I'm going to do one last plug here. Estella and I are giving some fall trainings. We've already had one about the Creative Edge Plan and how to decode buzzwords. We have one coming up next week that's free. It's about the journey of Soul Collective and 916 Inc. because her and I get asked all the time how we started absolutely like those organizations from nothing, from $0 to what they are today. And so we really teach you how to leverage your capital because many of us, we don't have money. So how did we do it? How did we build it? And that's what Estella and I want to teach you. And then we have other sessions from collaboration to revenue funding models. And then this is something I teach on all the time, which is the power of your presence, which is how you pitch funders and you self-advocate. All right, that was a lot and it's 12:30. But I hope this was really, really useful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can get there. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Here we are. All right, am I stopping sharing my screen now? I think, yeah, I am. Okay. If we applied as a creative business in the first round, can we apply as an individual artist in the second round? Yeah, if that makes sense for you. Thanks, Michael. Janine, how do we enroll for those workshops you just mentioned? Ray, yeah, there should be a link on the website, but Janine, I'm happy to send you that link as well. I'll just do that right now.
Which ones?
The ones that Estella and I are doing.
Yeah, we don't have I don't have that posted anywhere.
Okay. Do you mind if I post it here and these people?
Not at all. That's up to you how many people you want to invite.
We like to invite a lot of people. I'm all about the access, all about the access. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. Ada, how do we go best about scheduling the mentor meeting? So if you go to the Office of Arts and Culture website, there is a link there for you to be able to schedule time with a mentor, and it'll take you to like an appointment scheduler that'll show you all of our availability. I have not put in my availability yet because I'm kind of crazy right now, but I'm going to, and I'm going to do that by 3 p.m. today. So if you want me to be your mentor for 15 to 30 minutes next week, I would gobble up whatever I am able to put on the calendar by 3 p.m. today. Where can we get the slides from today? Ray will post them on the Office of Arts and Culture website. And yep, Ray just posted that link. I want to post the link to my Eventbrite, which I'll do shortly. But that pretty much takes care of our time today. Thank you for coming. In French, we say bon chance, good luck. You can do it, plug and play. When you get lost, follow the formula. Just talk to the page. And yes, my earrings are from Tula in Bloom, Amona Va Akade, and I love her. All right, I'm gonna put that link in the thing. I'll stick around for a few minutes, but our meeting is done. Thank you. Let's see, Eventbrite. Better this way.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Shira. Thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, it's so good. Thank you.
All righty. I need to Ray Eventbrite. Okay. Here we go. I'm getting up the Eventbrite link for those trainings with Estella and I. If you guys don't know Estella Sanchez, she's the founder of Soul Collective. She's so awesome and really, really innovative. And she knows like so much more about like shared governance models and different ways to run nonprofits than I do. So I put the Eventbrite link in there for those other sessions. And I'm going to send the slides to Ray now. All right. Thanks, everyone.